think so.
Yes.
Like, next Thursday, Thursday after. That's like the last.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's 10:01, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. I guess we'll take a few minutes to do introductions, and then we will jump into the presentation. I think I sent out the schedule, but just to give you a feel for what we're going to do today, Janine and I are going to be sharing for about 50 minutes. I didn't exactly time it, about the program, giving some pretty in-depth insights, and we're happy to take questions throughout that presentation and questions at the end. We'll cover everything from the curriculum to like major projects to the application process. And then at, I think 11, yeah, it's 10 o'clock, we have a few students coming in that are currently in the program, and we'll step out and you all have the opportunity to ask them personal questions about their experience in the program. Really anything that you want to ask regarding the student perspective. After that, we will just have open networking time and time for refreshments. Are there any questions before we get started? All right. Well, welcome. This is the Virginia Tech Master of Science in Nutrition Dietetics Program open house event. It's really great to be here. It's always exciting to meet prospective students and talk about the program. Always a fun day for both of us. See if my clicker wants to work. It might not be its day today. All right. Well, maybe I need to do that. So there's actually 3 of us in our program leadership. Unfortunately, Dr. Annette Larson-Meyer, our fearless leader, program director, was unable to be here today due to a family emergency. But I'm Kristen Chang. I'm the assistant director of the program. I've been here since the program originally started. I think I started December 2017. We received our original accreditation from MSND, the Accreditation Council in Education, Nutrition, Dietetics, in 2018, and we started with our first class of students in 2019 that fall. A little bit about my background. I come with experience in the areas of clinical or long-term care, and then I did a few years of private practice with a focus on sports nutrition before taking my current position. So I do have my credential as a certified specialist in sports dietetics. Try to stay connected in that area as well. But really was just drawn to the program because I was teaching on the side, doing private practice, and really found myself enjoying working with students.
Hello, I'm Janine Simon. I'm the Supervised Experiential Learning Coordinator for Carillion Clinic. So I kind of oversee the Carillion side of the rotations mainly, but I also interact in the didactic in the classroom as well, some of the teaching. My background is all over the place. I never really could figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I started in clinical in nutrition support and trauma, and I ended up in oncology for a while, and then I went back to ICU nutrition, and then I went into long-term care, and then I went into clinical research coordinating, and then I went into teaching. And then after many years, ended up back here at Virginia Tech, where I went to school for both bachelor's and master's, working with Kristen in this program. And it's really nice because I get to utilize all those years of experience in varying, different aspects towards, helping the students figure out what they want to do in setting up their rotations. So, yep.
Yeah. And I should probably mention a little bit about the background of Dr. Annette Larson-Meyer. So Dr. Larson-Meyer joined us from the University of Wyoming about 2 years ago. And she has a really strong background in research, clinically focused research, with particular emphasis on vitamin D, I believe iodine, and energy metabolism. So she maintains an active research program while also providing a lot of oversight for the program itself and teaching. Oh, that works. Magic. So our program is what's called a future education model graduate program. So to give you a little bit of background on this, in 2018, MSND began accrediting new programs under this future education model, which is designed to really address the fact that to prepare dietitians for future practice in this rapidly evolving field. So what happened is they did basically a projection or an evaluation of the landscape of the field and where they see us being in 20, 25 years, and the skill sets that they believe that we need to be preparing future practitioners to be able to execute. So part of the emphasis, there's a few different things that we'll emphasize with this future education model. A, preparing for the future of the profession. B, it provides a direct entry pathway for students who are coming from non-MSND accredited undergraduate backgrounds, which I think is wonderful. Anything that we can do to make our field more accessible. So that means we have a blend of students in the program that are dietetics undergrad background and then a variety of other backgrounds, which is really cool. The other aspect is the integration of graduate level coursework and supervised experiential learning within one integrated complementary program. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. Oh, okay. So I got a little ahead of myself. So I mentioned about the direct entry pathway for students. We have an emphasis on a competency-based education approach, meaning throughout the program, we have, it's designed to ensure competency across all the different areas of the dietetics versus traditional dietetic internships, which is more of a time-based approach where you do a certain amount of hours in each different practice setting. We do dictate like minimum hours that we feel is necessary to demonstrate competency, but within the program, we have a lot of different assessments and evaluations to ensure you're meeting competency progressively at a higher level across the different areas. Our program has an integration of academic coursework and supervised experiential learning. So a lot of the big question that always comes up is, does this program fulfill my internship requirement? Absolutely, yes. We have 950 to about 1,000 hours of supervised practice integrated across 4 rotations that we'll talk about. And then additional, what we call alternative supervised practice that's integrated within your coursework. So you're doing a blend of graduate level courses and supervised practice. The two are meant to build upon each other and integrate. It's a little different too than what we call coordinated MSDI program. In that those programs tend to do all the graduate level coursework first and all the internship at the end. With this program, you're doing both throughout the entire program. And then I already mentioned this last piece. So top 5 reasons to get a master's degree. We just wanted to touch on this point. It's always great to be ahead of the curve in the graduate degree requirement, which starts in January 2024. Ability to take on higher level dietitian jobs directly out of graduation. So a lot of higher paying and higher like management type level jobs are now requiring a master's degree. And if you're interested in ever teaching in the future at the collegiate level, that also requires a master's degree too. So that opens up the door to be able to teach in your area of practice, which I think is really neat. Quality, meaningful projects that add to your portfolio to enhance marketability for future employers. I'm going to let Janine talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so we have several large capstone projects, and my capstone projects I'm referring to sort of at the end of your supervised experiential learning rotations. There's usually some kind of capstone project that kind of takes everything that you've learned about throughout that supervised experiential learning and the didactic, combines it together into one large project, capstone project. Those capstone projects have proven to be very helpful to a lot of our past graduates in the sense that they talk about them during their interviews with potential employers, and the employers are always very interested in what they did and the results. Some examples are some QI clinical studies that the students were a part of at Carillion on COVID patients in the ICU. And, one of our graduates, when she was interviewing, the interviewer was extremely interested in that project and the results. And I think that had a lot to do with, choosing her as a candidate. In addition, there's a lot of capstone projects that encompass leadership skills and skills that you wouldn't think of when you think of, the dietetics profession in terms of accounting and human resource management.
Project management.
Project management, and all of that is also really great to bring forward when you're out there looking for a job. You'll leave the program with a portfolio of these really well done, high quality capstone projects that you can show to your potential employers.
Yeah, and also that we have found our students just really get into just because of, they're very hands-on, very applicable. They're not just like a written case study on paper working through problems. They're very real life based scenarios that align specifically with what they're wanting to do in the future. And then the last point is just advanced skills in the application of research process and nutrition informatics. So just in case I forget to say this later, we are considered a professionally oriented program. So we do not require specific research and thesis in order to graduate, but we do emphasize a strong appreciation and application of research processes throughout the entire program. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Any questions so far? Okay. So programmatic grants, we integrate coursework and supervised practice, as I mentioned earlier. So we are a 51 credit program, with the timeline being a little different depending on which track you end up pursuing. Of those credits, 32 are dedicated towards graduate level courses. And we don't go through the curriculum, but that's in the videos that I sent out. And then 19 credits are specific to supervised experiential learning rotations. And we're going to talk about the 4 main rotations here in a few minutes. And like I said, all of that is integrated together. I think there's only one point in the program for track 1 students where they're only doing supervised practice, and that's food service at the end of summer. Otherwise, there's that integration of coursework and supervised practice throughout the entire program. Just in case you weren't sure, completion of our program does impart eligibility to sit for the RDN credentialing exam. So at the end of the program, you'll receive both a Master of Science diploma in nutrition and dietetics, and then we will sign off on a verification statement, which then imparts, again, eligibility for you to sit for that RDN exam through the Commission on Dietetics Registration. So you don't have to go off and complete an additional internship after this program. It's one comprehensive package together. And then our program has an emphasis on nutrition counseling for behavior change. And I do go into more detail here in a few minutes, but it's designed with the intention of preparing graduates with advanced skills in the areas of both counseling and communication. And a big reason why we chose to pursue that emphasis is because we feel like these skills are very translatable no matter what area of dietetics you choose to pursue in the future. So there's 2 tracks available, and I'd just like to bring that back up just to make sure there's clarity among the group in terms of like which track you would be applying for. So track 1 is what we consider to be our traditional pathway. This is designed for 2 different student groups. One is any student seeking the RDN credential. Well, so to be eligible for this pathway, you need to be pursuing a bachelor's degree. It doesn't have to be Bachelor of Science. And you can be coming from either an MSND accredited undergraduate program or any other undergraduate program, as long as you've met specific program prerequisites prior to the program start date. So some students do have that MSND verification statement, but not all. This pathway is 17 months, starting each fall. We only have 1 group start each year, and does require a minimum of a 3.0 GPA to apply. Track 2 is our accelerated BS, MS, or bachelor's to master's program, and this is designed specifically for current students in the human nutrition, foods and exercise program, dietetics concentration to apply for in the spring of their junior year, with the intention of starting the program that fall of their senior year, taking 12 credits graduate level courses in conjunction with finishing that undergraduate degree, and then continuing full-time in the program after their undergraduate graduation that following May. So this pathway is 21 months, including that senior year, and requires a minimum of a 3.4 GPA in order to apply. Any questions about the 2 tracks? Okay. Please don't hesitate to raise your hand if you have a question. So program highlights, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, our emphasis is on nutrition counseling for behavior change. So we really aim for that practical application of behavior change theories, counseling techniques, and communication skills to facilitate nutrition-related behavior change of both individuals, groups, and populations. These are a few of the skills that we focus on developing: a strong appreciation and application of motivational interviewing, cultural humility, preparing you to work with diverse populations in the future, nutrition and assessment and documentation, that client-centered counseling and education, which I think really ties back well with cultural humility as well. And really more, it's, we have a few specific courses addressing this emphasis, but then the opportunity to practice and apply through all of your supervised practice rotations. It's great. I have a lot more pictures to pull from this year now that we're a few years into the program. This is just a picture of one of our current students who just finished up her community nutrition rotation with Carilion Clinic's diabetes management program. And within that, she got to do some outpatient counseling and teach a few group classes. So students will all have the opportunity to participate in our department's nutrition counseling service. So HNFE, Human Nutrition, Foods, and Exercise, has a nutrition counseling service that serves the Virginia Tech community, in that undergraduates, graduates, faculty, and staff, anyone associated with Virginia Tech is able to sign up and be paired to do a one-on-one nutrition session with a graduate student. And so you'll each do one semester with this course, where you will again have that opportunity to really put into practice the application of counseling techniques and in order to facilitate the nutrition-focused behavior change. I help to implement that course. It's really great to see the student skills develop over the course of the semester. There's a lot of self-reflection involved with that course, and then weekly client review sessions where students come together and discuss with the clients that they worked with while maintaining confidentiality, of course, any challenges they encountered, what went well, what are some things that they're looking for guidance on to improve both their future sessions and their own personal counseling skills. Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say about that. Yeah, this is a picture of, this is from last summer, I think. With the pandemic, the counseling service has been moved online. I foresee that that will move back to a choice of in-person and online counseling. It's interesting because the students actually love the online counseling. I think because we all acknowledge that telehealth is the way of the future. And so the students say it's been really great for them to really enhance their technology skills and get used to the online counseling in preparation for, potentially engaging in telehealth as a practitioner. And you can, if you want to learn more about the counseling service, and I'm going to send out these slides after today's presentation, you can check it out on the HNFE webpage. All right, research methods. So as I mentioned, we do not require a thesis. We do not require a specific research project, but we do integrate a very strong appreciation of research throughout the entire program. And one of the courses or capstone center courses for that is going to be this research methods in nutrition and physical activity, taught by Dr. Brenda Davey, who's got a stellar research program within our department. And so 2 things that the course emphasizes: one is research evaluation and design for clinical and behavioral research, with that emphasis on diet and physical activity assessment and interventions. And then within the course, students are required to evaluate and critique original research, and then independently design a study to address a pertinent research question. So I think our current students are submitting this project right now so all the students will put together a grant proposal related to a topic of interest where they're essentially designing a research study. And then they'll present that both orally and in writing. What else was I going to say about this? I was just going to mention the fact that one of the things that we really value, particularly from a nutrition communication standpoint, is being able to effectively evaluate science and evidence-based practice in the form of these research studies, to understand those studies at a deep level, and then be able to translate that into language, communication, interventions, programs that are effective and easily understood by target audiences. So that's where research is really the core of our profession, and where we feel strongly about needing to have a strong understanding of research processes through this graduate program. Oops. There's a few research-related projects that are integrated. One is this grant proposal according to National Institute of Health guidelines. That's what I mentioned just a minute ago. There's a clinically focused QI project, which I'll let Janine talk about.
Yep. So during clinical rotations, all students will be involved in a clinical QI project. And I can give you some examples. In the past, we had, the one I mentioned where, sometimes we actually try to meet individual students' interests in terms of research. And usually there's something that would interest everyone. So sometimes we assign the QI projects individually to work with an individual preceptor or clinical dietitian. And sometimes we make, across the board group projects that are addressing a need within Carilion or a problem that we're having, a quality problem. In the past, we've had, I mentioned the COVID patients, we've had pediatric focused assessments and quality improvement. We've had a lot of malnutrition focused quality improvement studies, mainly because Carilion is currently going through a massive QI assessment and project, looking at our gaps in quality and trying to make changes in the way that our workflow for malnutrition. So that's been a big one. This past group just finished their QI project and looking at studying PO intake documentation. So I don't know if you guys are familiar, PO intake is by mouth, like eating by mouth. So how much somebody is eating. And in the clinical setting, that's extremely important to the dietitian for assessing for malnutrition. It's part of the Aspen SCCM malnutrition criteria when you're trying to see if somebody meets the criteria for malnutrition. So you need to know how much they're eating. And when you work in any kind of clinical setting, whether it's long-term care or acute care, you're reliant upon what the CNAs are writing down in the charts for percent PO intake. Unfortunately, in a lot of healthcare facilities, it's not being done. It just gets looked over. The CNAs don't have time. So our students actually went into the charts and did a prospective data collection of PO intake rates on specific units, and then came up with an education to educate the CNAs on their chosen units on PO intake and how to document effectively, came up with infographics, and then did another data collection post-education to see if there was any difference in behavior amongst the nursing staff. And when they presented it, we ended up having stakeholder leadership at that meeting, high-level leadership, that were very interested in the results and actually spurred on more meetings with some human factors folks, which is a whole nother topic, to try to address the problem. So the QI projects always address something that's a real problem, real life, it's happening, and all the results that we've ever gotten from those QI projects have been put into practice. We're using all of the infographics right now across the system that the students just developed I just sent those out on Friday and everyone is using them across the system. So the graduate students came up with those on their own. So we
Oh.
utilize that information.
I should put it up on the screen next time.
Yeah. I'll talk a little bit about the clinical case study since I'm already talking, give you a
Yeah.
little break. So the clinical case study is also part of the clinical SEL. And clinical, again, is the last rotation that you do. This is kind of at the very end of clinical, towards the end, right before staff relief, usually. You'll do an oral clinical case study and then that will be followed up by a written case study. The written case study is written according to JAND publication guidelines. So it's written like you're going to publish a case study.
JAND is the Journal of Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics.
Yep. Thank you. And the oral, so what you do is while you're going through your clinical rotations, you choose a patient that's of interest to you. And you do a real focused deep dive on that patient in terms of background, pathophysiology of disease, labs, meds, do a really full assessment of that patient and deliver that orally to faculty and preceptors and hopefully the MNT class here will be starting to tune in on Zoom. So that's been, that's been kind of the capstone, the end all be all. Everybody knows that after that, it's kind of like, okay, almost to graduation. But that is where a lot of that research informatics comes in. And we've tried to incorporate more and more research informatics into the program, so that everybody is well aware of and knows how to do searches, not just PubMed, but how to do really good searches, how to find really good research to support what you're talking about.
Yeah. So when we say research informatics, a lot of that goes back to finding and accessing quality research studies specific to topic areas of interest, so specific to that patient need. Yeah, and how to do a fine-tuned, comprehensive search of many different databases, which is not quite as straightforward as it seems these days. These search engines are very powerful, and it's a learned art to manipulate them to find what you're looking for. Yeah.
So we have a dedicated person to HNFE that actually works with our students to help them in this process. So that's been really great. I will say that the focus and appreciation of research is near and dear to my heart. I feel like dietitians need to be doing research, particularly outcomes research. We don't do enough of it. And so we really, that is why it's such an emphasis for all of us feel very strongly about doing research once you get out into the field.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about
Yeah, I'm going to just touch on the evidence-based community nutrition intervention or program implementation. So during the community nutrition supervised practice rotation, everyone will do why am I drawing a blank? Program plan assignment where they identify a target audience and develop an evidence-based program or education for that audience. And a big part of that is doing a deep dive into the research to identify what are past effective programs that have already been implemented and shown to be effective. And we don't want students recreating the wheel. We want them to look for past programs that have already been shown to be effective with a similar target audience, and taking that program and tailoring it to the target audience that they have identified and then implementing it. All right, so we're going to spend a few minutes highlighting some of the unique courses. We don't have time to get into all of them, but there's a few that are sort of near and dear to our heart and that we're really passionate about. And the first is Food for Optimal Health. So all students will take this in the first half of summer and the second year of the program during that summer semester. It's a 6-week course, and it really is unique in that it touches on the intersection of a lot of different topics that are really closely interrelated and that we feel is really critical for dietitians to have a strong understanding and appreciation of. So that is going to be local and global food practices, food insecurity, sustainable food systems, and then promotion of optimal health for populations. So the didactic goes into like a deep dive into those topics, and then students, there's a lab component. So there's hands-on recipe development, and then a big emphasis too on nutrition communication skills. So within this class, students are formulating recipe infographics, they're blogging, they're doing social media posts, they're doing presentations. My favorite is the recipe demonstration videos. TikTok's very popular right now. So a lot of our students are like, let's make a TikTok video demonstrating a recipe. And it's great because, you know, a lot of students go on to their community nutrition rotation directly after this class and then put all those skills into practice at their specific practice sites. So this is a picture from the first year of the program. This is a representation of mise en place recipe preparation, where that's just you're laying out all of your recipe ingredients, similar to if you were going to be doing a cooking demonstration in front of a live audience. You want to have all those ingredients ready and set to go so that you can effectively demonstrate and efficiently demonstrate that recipe. Oh, and this is such a great picture. I wasn't able to go to this year, but this year all the students went up to Polyface Farms in Swoop, Virginia. So Swoop is near Stanton, so about 2 hours north here on Interstate 81. And they did a tour of the farm, which really has a strong emphasis on regenerative agriculture. With Joe Salatin. This is Joe right here. This is our wonderful smiling students. Whoever took this picture, it's such a great picture. Yeah.
Gosh, you're not tired.
So they had a really great time with this and just learning about the importance of regenerative agriculture, and why and how that is the way of the future when it comes to meeting the food demands of our growing population while still keeping our planet and soil happy and healthy. And this is just an example of a capstone project. So students develop a recipe. There's two or three different recipe creations, but the capstone project takes it a few steps further, and then they create an infographic of their recipe as well. The next course is Business of Healthcare and Dietetics. So this is taught by Dr. Michelle Rockwell, who's also an HNFE Hokie alumni, but now also does research with Kervilling Clinic. She has a very strong background in private practice and a very strong appreciation for reimbursement practices when it comes to healthcare. So this unique course really touches on a lot of different topics, including business management and strategy skills for dietitians, private practice entrepreneurship, public relations messaging, and then healthcare administration, federal and state regulations, and policy that impacts the dietetics profession. This picture here is one of our students presenting her everyone does an entrepreneurship project where they basically create a nutrition business and then they present it to a live audience, Shark Tank style. And one student gets selected, of course, as the winner. And it's really quite a neat event. My favorite to attend each year. And I love that project too, because that, along with a lot of other projects, students can really adapt to their specific interest areas. I'll let you talk about clinical care applications.
So when clinical SEL is happening, when in clinical rotations, there is 1 day of didactic. So 1 day, it's usually Fridays, where we have class. So you'd be in rotation Monday through Thursday, and then you're in class on Fridays. And one of the classes during clinical is clinical nutrition applications. In this class, we basically take MNT to the next step, to the next level. MNT is a really good foundational course for nutrition therapy, so medical nutrition therapy, But in clinical applications, we take it to another level. We do a further analysis and deep dive into labs. So biochemical analysis, further analysis into food-drug interactions. There's more hands-on application of actually doing anthropometrics with patients, doing metabolic cart studies, interpreting metabolic cart studies. So how to assess for calories, for calorie needs. And then we have a lot of guest speakers that come in who are accomplished in a certain field. So we might have somebody come in and talk about just renal. So a renal dietitian who will come in and really just focus on renal and tell a lot of stories about what they've done. And most of these people have been practicing for years in their field. Let's talk about what it's like to be, say, a renal dietitian, what it's like to interact with patients, and then work through case studies with you in class and outside of class. So you get a more deeper appreciation for the pathophysiology and biochemistry. It really is it's my favorite because it takes everything that you've learned and puts it into one class. So now when you're talking about somebody who's in the ICU who hasn't been eating for 3 weeks and you're worried about refeeding syndrome, all right, let's go back to metabolism. Let's talk about the Krebs cycle. Let's talk about, going back, let's figure out why does refeeding syndrome happen? Why does it happen? What's happening physiologically? Why does somebody who's an alcoholic need more thiamine? Let's talk about the pathophysiology of that. Let's go back to your biochemistry. So it really kind of pulls from all of that science and medical background that you have and puts it into that class. So that's been a favorite of mine. So yeah, it's really lots of hands-on. We have speakers come in and talk about diabetes management and continuous glucose monitoring. So all the different devices that are out there now for continuous glucose monitoring, and that's what we're showing here. Every student that we've had, we have a wonderful speaker who brings in a glucometer. So everybody gets their own brand new glucometer to take home with them so they can track their blood glucose. Plans for the future include trying to have everybody actually wear a CGM device for 1 or 2 weeks. So you have it inserted in your arm or in your belly and track your blood glucose for a couple of weeks. So we're hoping to get that in place.
I want to participate in that.
Hmm?
I want to participate in that.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
It's actually very interesting, and of course, it's very interesting to be able to put yourself in the shoes of someone who has diabetes and has to wear one of these monitors and monitor the blood sugar and adjust their calories or carbohydrate intake accordingly. For me, it's super interesting because a big thing right now in sports nutrition is for athletes to wear these continuous glucose monitor and to use that data output to better enhance their fueling practices on a day-to-day basis or even during a race. One of our graduate teaching assistants, PhD students in the program who works under Dr. Arnett Larsenmeyer actually wore one during the Chicago Marathon a few weeks back. I didn't hear the outcome, but I thought it was interesting that she did that.
I believe it actually fell off a couple miles.
Did she?
I believe because it ended up getting messed up or something, and she got some data from it.
Okay.
She didn't get,
I'm sure she'll be trying it again.
Yeah.
I want to do that. That's one of my goals.
Yeah, so interesting, just really quick side story. So all of the speaker that we have come in, she comes in from the VA and she brings everybody their own, glucometer. And this is the old fashioned style, I should say. It's not the continuous. So you actually have to prick your finger. So she had, this last class of students, she had them all, pull them out of the box, unbox them, get them out and do, actually prick their finger and do their blood glucose. And what we realized very quickly is we're in a room of graduate students. Everybody's in this room is, educated and excited and motivated and totally confused about what to do with this glucose monitor. You would think that this would be very straightforward. So then that led into, what do you think this is like for the patients? Like these folks who are coming in that,
yeah,
they just got this diagnosis. They have no idea what to do with this thing. And we can't, we're having trouble figuring out how to just get, what's the next step? What do I need to do next? So It's those kinds of experiences that we really like to incorporate so that you really get an idea of, empathy for the folks that you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're gonna spend a few minutes talking about our 4 supervised practice rotations. The first one being, this is a quick overview. So there's 4 different supervised practice rotations that add up to, I think, about 950 hours of at least scheduled supervised practice integrated within the program. And then, like I said, additional hours are integrated throughout the courses. Just a quick clarifying point. So dietetic internship programs, they're required to have a minimum of 1,200 hours. We don't have that same requirement as a teacher education graduate program. I think really our minimum is only 900. No, it's 1,000. We're now required to have at least 1,000 hours to meet licensure laws so that you can go and practice in any state and meet those minimum licensure requirements. But rather than saying that we have to have a minimum of 1,200, MSND just says that we have to have dictate the number of supervised practice hours across the program. And then the emphasis beyond that is really on the demonstration of competency. So 4 different rotations in this order, first being dietetics professional management, then community food service management, and clinical nutrition at the very end, that final semester. And then as we've mentioned, with coursework integrated throughout this entire process. All right, so supervised practice sites. I always forget to say this, and I apologize, Janine. It's important to note that our program partners very closely with Carilion Clinic, and Carilion Clinic serves as the primary provider of supervised practice. So the majority of our sites are going to be either with Virginia Tech or Carilion Clinic. We do have some other community partner sites that we're starting to utilize. And it really just depends on preceptor availability, site availability for a given year, and then student interest areas. Oops. Gotta get better at my clicking. All right, so the first rotation is dietetics and professional management. And this looks a little bit different than a traditional rotation in that you're not at a professional work setting. It's a lot of simulation and case-based work. But the students actually like that. They feel like it's good to ease into the supervised practice and prepare them for future rotations. So this rotation is very specifically partnership between Virginia Tech and Carilion. Janine and I teach it together. And then we utilize experts, or we call them preceptors, but they're experts across both Virginia Tech and Carilion to come in and talk about different topics and guide practice in that manner. So some major themes: clinical nutrition and food service management with an emphasis on the management component, performance and quality improvement, human resource management, risk management, marketing and promotion, and emotional intelligence. That's not even a comprehensive list. The biggest emphasis of this rotation is the management and leadership skills, and preparing students to be able to take some of those higher level positions and some of the specific roles and responsibilities that they would see as a registered dietitian in a management or leadership role. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, one great thing about this is that if you end up in a hospital that is a smaller hospital, sometimes, your first job right out of the gate is in a small hospital as the only RD, because there's a low number of patient beds. And as the only RD, you end up doing a mix of clinical, inpatient, outpatient, food service, management, hiring, firing, accounting, budgeting. So that this class serves everyone very well, because you come out of the program with some of these skills that aren't traditionally or haven't been traditionally taught in dietetics courses. So you can walk out and understand what a budget is, how to do a budget, some basic accounting skills, Excel spreadsheet skills, things like that. So it's been really good.
Mm-hmm. So this rotation has a capstone case study that students work on, and they typically commit about 20 to 30 hours on this specific case study. And the topic has changed each year. The focus for the first year was malnutrition. and implementation of the Malnutrition Quality Improvement Initiative at Carilion Clinic, again, based on a very real scenario. And the nice thing is that students contributed back to the organization. Carilion was able to use that information and data that the students presented and launch that initiative, essentially. The second year, students did a comprehensive feasibility study of basically what it would take to expand outpatient nutrition services to better address patient needs with the chronic disease states of, let's see, hypertension, what is it?
Kidney disease,
Chronic kidney disease, COPD, pulmonary disorder, and one more, heart disease. Yeah. So within that, they did scheduling, they did financial analysis, they incorporated reimbursement. And it was really neat to see what they all came together. Honestly, the students just blew us out of the water with their with their projects.
Yeah, they came up with algorithms on Excel and everything. It
Yeah.
was really interesting.
Yeah, we're starting to emphasize the application of Excel, partially because it's a very powerful platform, and a lot of students have actually given us the feedback that they want to enhance their Excel skills, knowing that's very easily accessible. And again, a very powerful data management platform if you know how to use it correctly. All right, community nutrition supervised practice. This is a picture here from this past fall, actually, very recent, of Allie and Caitlin. They were paired at Carilion Community Health Education and Outreach. And they frequently visited what's called Morningside Urban Farm, which serves low-income residents in Southeast Roanoke, to help improve food accessibility for that population. So they got to, along with other community program components of the rotation, spend some time relaxing and playing in the dirt and helping with the farm maintenance. And they said that was actually their favorite way to start the week. They usually did it on Monday mornings. Yeah. So here we've listed the different community nutrition practice sites that are available to students at the moment. Really a lot of different directions that you can take that rotation, a lot of flexibility. And we're starting to look at more like outpatient counseling type practice sites, so that students can continue to apply and build those counseling skills with a population of interest. Yeah, the capstone is that community program plan, which I mentioned earlier. I'm trying to think of the different programs that the students just did. In the summer, some of the students at VT Athletics created a training program for incoming freshmen athletics to increase their baseline knowledge of sports nutrition. We had one student this past fall who really helped to revamp the Balanced Living with Diabetes program, which was traditionally in person, but now is being taught online. So to make it more of an effective online program. A lot of program development and implementation. I'm drawing a blank on their different projects.
So Allie, who just walked in the back and who was pictured here in the garden, she developed a program for community health and outreach, which I just got an email on Allie that is being implemented here in the next month or so. So the programs that are designed are implemented. It's not just a case study,
It's not just
it's not
theoretical.
a simulation or theoretical. These are real programs that are developed and then utilized within the places that you rotate.
Yeah, and we try to work and identify programs that can be implemented during the rotation itself, but sometimes that's not feasible. So sometimes they're planned for future implementation shortly after, within the next year, usually. Oh, more pictures. There's Allie with her. I hope is that Feeding Southwest Virginia? Thank you. Gosh, I got it right. Yes. All right. So 2 summers ago, Jenny and Avita here on the left, they created a bunch of, I think they called it tasty videos.
Yeah.
That were then promoted on social media for community health education and outreach. And then earlier this fall, Allie got to present a session on grocery shopping, meal planning, and budgeting to individuals at Feeding Southwest Virginia. That was a pilot of her program itself. All right, moving on to food service management. And this is a picture here. Virginia Tech Athletics serves as one of our practice for management. And this is 2 summers ago. No, this is last fall. One of the project potentials is a themed meal. And so Kylie did a catered based theme meal for the baseball team last fall and paired it with this beautiful handout, which was not required, but we find our students just tend to go above and beyond. So a few of our site listings here again, Virginia Tech Dining, Virginia Tech Athletics just opened their new Student Athletic Performance Center, which is a dining hall exclusively for student athletes. And then Carilion has a number of hospital management-based rotations. And then some of the sites that we've used in the past, Local Environmental Agriculture Projects, or LEAP, is sort of a non-traditional but sustainability-focused type food service management rotation. Feeding Southwest Virginia, if you're really interested in working with low-income populations. Montgomery County Public Schools, and then Roanoke Rescue Mission. So for this rotation, the capstone is either a major project or a theme-based meal. So I'm going to skip ahead a slide or two. So a great example of theme meal, 2 of our students that rotate with athletics in the summer did a carnival themed meal for football camp. And I will tell you, like, this picture does not even do justice to the craziness of that meal. When you saw the amount of food and when you put all the athletes in there, it was just phenomenal what they put together. And I know Allie right now is putting together a Thanksgiving theme meal that will be implemented here in a few weeks at the same setting. Other things, we've had harvest theme meals, we've had like Mexican theme meals, a few other things. Other students, football season, yeah. Other major projects, do you want to share about the Carilion Retail Wellness Project?
Yeah, so this year we started a major project for students who are rotating through food service management, SEL, with Carilion. And we have 3 right now that are, one is at Carilion River Valley Medical Center, one is at Roanoke Memorial, Spencer, who's going to be here to answer questions, and we have one at Community Hospital. And what we've done, or what we started this year, was we have a retail base. So we have a retail side and a patient side at Carilion. The retail side are basically all of our cafes that employees and outside people can come in and get food. So that's a whole separate, food service management aspect. And then aside from that, we have patient food service. And so they're really very different. But on the retail side, we have a wellness program that the dietitians oversee and some of the food service folks oversee every year. And every year there's a theme. So what we did was the first group of students that came through in food service, we had them come up with a theme for 2022 for us. And they proposed 3 or 4 different overarching themes for the year of 2022. They developed a theme and we had them develop a logo for that year, which they did. And then each of the 3 students were assigned 2 months of 2022. And for those 2 months, they had to come up with recipes for each week to highlight. They had to break down, they had to do a HACCP plan for one of those recipes. They had to come up with an inventory sheet, so what food needed to be ordered and how much, and extrapolate that out. And also come up with an infographic and education for their individual month. So each month they're assigned, they have to come up with a sub theme. So there's the overarching theme for 2022, and then each month has kind of a little mini theme. So they come up with that theme, they come up with the marketing for that theme, they come up with recipes that are associated with that theme, and they come up with education handouts for folks that are coming into the cafes for that theme. So that's just, if you're rotating with Carilion, that's what we're doing with those students right now.
Yeah. And then one more project that I'll highlight. We have a student currently, well, the 2 students that worked with VT Dining for food service have the one in the summer and then now in the fall is continuing it, have been developing a culinary nutrition program for the food service workers. to elevate their overall culinary skills. Virginia Tech Dining is very much about serving their employees and educating them and promoting their professional development. So it's really cool that our students are able to contribute to that through this culinary nutrition program. All right. A few more pictures. This is Feeding Southwest Virginia Children's Farmers Market 2 summers ago. Just this past fall, not too long ago, a couple of weeks, students toured the
US food.
thank you, it's covered up. US Foods, which does a lot. It's a major food warehouse that serves all of Virginia and like within a 400-mile radius. I already talked about the theme meal, and then this is Spencer and Cassie preparing turkey wraps for Tasty Tuesday. Hopefully I got that right. Next. All right.
Okay, so
Clinical.
Yeah. So this is our current group of students who are in clinical right now. And when I see them, it just makes me smile. Can't help it. We all get very close during this process as a group. I feel like we spend a lot of time together, and I see these folks almost on a daily basis, and checking in with them regularly. This was our first day. So we do a pretty extensive orientation for clinical nutrition SEL, where we do go back and do an MNT review just to make sure that everybody's back up to speed on MNT. And then we do some simulation at our simulation lab in Roanoke. Carilion has a simulation lab where when you go in, they actually have patient rooms that are set up exactly like real patient rooms over at RMH. And I think there's probably, that's a simulation room. And that's actually one of our preceptors in the bed, Grace. So, and then I'm behind a mirrored wall, so they can't see me. And you do different simulations. So this time we had, these two are doing a patient interview. So this is what we do, a patient interview first in simulation, and then we talk about it a lot. And then in the afternoon, we go back over to RMH and do an actual patient interview with the real patient. So we sort of ease you into that. We also did a simulation for NFPE, so nutrition focused physical exam. So each student had to study, had a class, studied on it, practiced it outside, and then came in and did a one-on-one nutrition focused physical exam with our lovely preceptor, Grace. Which helped inform their skills for when they go over and actually do it with the patient.
Is that when they practice the feeding tube insertion?
Yeah, and on that same day when you weren't doing NFPE, you were practicing feeding tube placement.
This picture on the right.
So we had a core track, which is a specific kind of device that Carilion uses. Representative come in and teach the students how to use a core track feeding tube placement device in patients. So that was really fun. So that's a picture there. If you go back, so after the orientation, everybody in clinical nutrition will end up doing some type of med surge, which is basically, general patient population for a couple of weeks just to get involved in getting used to the EHR, which is electronic health record system. And then after that, there's lots of different potential rotations. And we do try to take everybody's interests into account. Because of preceptor availability, sometimes we can't meet everyone's interests, but we try to at least take the top 2 and get you some exposure to those areas. Keeping in mind that the goal is to get you to an entry-level competency for an entry-level clinical dietitian. So we're not trying to, in other words, the focus is not trying to, make you a nutrition support specialist, because that takes years and years and years to become. Pediatric specialist, again, years and years. We will expose you to that if that's a major interest of yours, but what we're really after is getting you to that entry level competency so that you can walk out of the program and walk into a clinical nutrition job, entry level, and know kind of, basically what you're doing, aside from the EHR, because the electronic health record changes depending on which institution you go to. They're all different. So this is just an example of some of the different types of experiences that we have to offer. So clinical nutrition SEL, the clinical applications course that I talked about before really complements the clinical nutrition SEL because you're in practice all week, Monday through Thursday, actually seeing patients. And then in class on Friday, we do talk more extensively about, again, the pathophysiology and some of the biochemistry that's associated with the different cases that you're seeing. So one thing that you find in clinical is that your cases are very complex, and the answer is always it depends. And my students are just on Friday, Emily Jacobs said, I'm going to quote Janine and say it depends because in clinical, it depends. And nothing's ever straightforward. When you learn MNT in class,
Every patient is different.
You'll learn about this is what I do with a cardiac patient. This is what I do with a renal patient. But in practice, you have somebody who is on a ventilator, they have 4 different organ systems failing, and you have to prioritize, what am I going to prioritize? Kidney, the lungs, the liver, and that's where it gets much more complicated. So you do see a lot of that. There's a quality improvement project, which I already talked about, and I already talked about the written and oral case study associated with that.
Yeah, I think.
And there's Kayla and Michaela, yeah.
Yeah, this is from last fall. Any questions about the 4 supervised practice rotations?
So in terms of we have classes and then there's the supervised practice. Is the supervised practice graded? Is that how are we assessed on that?
Good question. So all the supervised practice rotations are pass-fail. And the criteria for passing is outlined in each syllabi for each rotation, but it basically encompasses demonstration of competency based on summative performance evaluations, completion of all required projects or assignments, regular class attendance, and then meeting the minimum hour requirements. Yeah. And the nice thing about the competency-based approach, again, you're not being assigned a grade for your supervised practice. If a student does not demonstrate competency, and it's only happened once or twice, because we work with you to make sure you're staying on track, and we try to really value regular feedback. For example, if you don't demonstrate competency for one of the major projects, we just send it back to you for revisions, and you get a second shot, and then that's part of the learning process. If for some reason you didn't demonstrate competency on one of the summative performance evaluations, we would work to develop a individualized performance improvement plan, which might mean a little bit more on-site time to allow correction of any deficiencies so that you're fully prepared. Because again, minimum hours is good, but if you get to the end of the rotation and you're not truly competent, we want you to lead that rotation fully prepared to go into that area of practice, if so you decide to do so. Yes. For the rotations?
Yeah.
I'd say both.
A little bit of both. So what we do in the fall, the first semester, at the end, we put out a comprehensive survey that goes beyond just what your supervised practice choices are, but to learn more about you and your professional development goals, your personality, and then students will rank their desired sites in area of importance. And then we sit down and have individual meetings with each student just to clarify and confirm their choices, to learn more about what they're really looking for. And then it becomes a big puzzle.
Yeah.
A very big puzzle. We do our best to honor that first choice. Sometimes it comes down to whether or not the site is truly available, because things come up with preceptors, and sometimes, for example, we weren't able to offer pediatrics this fall because of turnover. Most often it's that first choice, maybe second. It's going to be, we're not really sure because now we're at full capacity. So I think it's going to be a little bit more of a give and take in that regard. And some sites like VT Athletics are very popular. So. Mm-hmm. Yep. We prepare students to go into a diverse areas of practice. And I'm going to mention that in a few minutes, some of the areas that our current alumni are practicing. questions? All right, so let's spend a few minutes talking about the application process. So this is our timeline for our current cycle of 2022. Our application deadline is February 1st for all application materials, including that letter of reference. And then as a reminder, students will apply directly to the Virginia Tech Graduate School. So if anyone's applying to traditional Dietech internship as well, that uses DieCast or D&D Digital. We don't participate in that. So students apply directly to Virginia Tech Graduate School. Today's our open house event. February 1st is that application deadline. So in terms of notification date, we process applications. We review all of our applications at once. We don't do a rolling admissions process. So once we receive all the applications, we review them in February, and our estimated date this year for notification is going to be the week of March 15th to 21st. And then finally, so that's a notification for us to tell you whether your application status. Come on, there we go. April 5th is our current deadline to commit or accept a position within the program. So we chose that date strategically for students who might be applying to independent dietetic internships. So the notification March 15th to 21st is before students have to re-rank within DieCast, any programs, or the deadline to withdraw from the match. And then April 5th is 2 days after the match notification for students who choose to continue through with that. Primary application requirements. Again, you apply through the graduate school. It does have a $75 fee. Let's see. Resume, 1 to 2 page resume. And that needs to list relevant experiences to the field of dietetics, any leadership, professional, or extracurricular activities. We do have a personal statement, and the 6, I think it might be 7 questions. I might have forgotten to update that. The questions that you're to address for your personal statement are on the program website. So make sure you address that. And I think now we extended it to 1,200 words because we added an extra question. And then 2 letters of reference. I always get questions about this, but it should be 1 academic oriented reference and 1 that's more professionally oriented based on your work experience. I'm not sure. I need to double check this. When you go into the application portal, it might ask you for 3. But know that we only accept 2. If you do submit 3, we only look senior year. And we have a form linked on the website that you will fill out with them, just so we know that it's feasible for you to balance your undergraduate and graduate coursework in that senior year. And then you'll submit a DARS report from Hokie Spa to go along with that within your application. Do you have a question? Okay, that's okay. Yeah, this is a fun picture. I had to work it in, Spencer. I wanted to proactively address some of our frequently asked questions regarding our application process. I thought this was in the presentation, but it must have disappeared. How many students are accepted? So we accept 20 students per cohort. We're now at full capacity as a program, and we generally keep that equal 10 students per track is what we aim for. In terms of the acceptance rate, oh gosh, I wrote this down, now I forgot. I believe our acceptance rate in full transparency for last year was 43%. It might have been 53% for track 1. I think we had 23 applicants for 10 spots for track 1 last year. And then the acceptance rate for track 2 was actually 100% this past year. I do expect that that will drop though, because we're expecting the numbers of applications each year have been steadily on the rise. So it's hard to give averages because our program is so new, but in full transparency, that's what it was last year. We do not offer rolling admission, meaning we don't review your application when they come in. There's no real benefit to submitting it super early. We review them all together at once as a cohort. And then we do maintain a wait list starting this past year. So if you didn't get in on that first try, you might be put on the wait list. And we did have, I think, 2 or 3 people get in off the wait list this past year for track 1. All right, what are we looking for in our candidates? We do feel that a solid GPA is important, knowing that this is a graduate level program and it's pretty rigorous in nature in terms of the courses and the full-time load, with a strong foundation in the sciences. Nutrition, the field of dietetics, is very much rooted in science, and particularly, but not just in the clinical SEL, when you get into clinical and medical nutrition therapy, having a strong performance in those undergraduate science courses is really going to aid and benefit you. That being said, we do look beyond, we do try to look at our applications very holistically, and know that it's not just about academic performance in terms of indicators of success in the program. Unique past experiences and backgrounds is always a plus. Anything that you can do to have hands-on experience within the field of dietetics or even outside the field, any professional work experience, I think aids in your ability to really meet the demands of the program when you get into those supervised practice rotations, particularly. Graduate level critical thinking and writing ability. And I will emphasize this, just making sure that you have very strong professional representation of this within your application through both that professional, or what do you call it, personal statement and resume and any other materials that you might submit. Come on, there we go. Strong interpersonal and communication skills. You will definitely put that to work within the program. Ability to work well independently, yet a strong appreciation and ability to work collaboratively as well, because you will have opportunities, ample opportunities to do both within the program. Demonstrate leadership and initiative. We find that this really goes a long ways when students get into their supervised practice rotations to really be able to step forward and demonstrate that initiative, particularly if things are unclear, or to communicate with their preceptors and advocate for their own needs as well. Any background and appreciation for the research process, active member of the nutrition and dietetics, and just generally being adaptable in the face of challenge. Because inevitably, you know, it is a tough program. It's pretty fast paced and challenges do arise. And we're here to support you in working through those challenges, but we want to see students who are able to demonstrate resiliency in the face of challenge as well. Is there anything you want to add?
Resilience.
Resilience is a
With
key
a
word.
capital R. Resilience and flexibility go a really long way. And in the application process, we do look for, we do look for demonstration of resilience in different aspects. It's really important that in the clinical SELs, you're able to flex when things change on a dime. Preceptor calls in sick, we have to move you to somebody else. Things change, and today you don't have a preceptor, so now you have to be self-directed and figure out what you're going to do. We do like to see a lot of self-motivation, self-direction, ability to work independently. That's really, really important. I like to see some kind of medical background, anything medical. That goes a long way as well. Once you get to clinical, that would be very helpful. Yeah.
Is there any interview process, or is it just the application that you submit?
Good question. Currently, there's no interview process. We are considering that for the future, but we won't be implementing an interview for this application cycle. Yeah. Any other questions about the application? Emily?
Spare.
It has like a GPA at the bottom, but if you haven't taken some of the courses, it's lower. Are you looking at that?
So it should be, make sure you follow all the directions. And I continually have to address the spreadsheet to make sure it's clear. and accurate. If you enter all the fields correctly, it should give you an accurate GPA calculation. We have gone back and manually made adjustments if we saw that it was skewed because of like the data not being entered correctly, and we do look at the individual grades. Hopefully that answers your question. And if you run into a question filling it out, please feel free to email me at any point regarding your application. Yes.
When you go on to like the VT grad school like portal for the application, like it asks you like a couple questions as to like finding the program you want to like submit. Like, what are we supposed to click? Like, I wasn't sure. Does that make sense?
Is that before you get into the application itself? Oh, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll have to go back and look at that.
Okay.
So the application itself, and maybe this will help answer the first half of the application is all generic to Virginia Tech. And then at a certain point, it'll ask you for your program of study. And that's when you need to make sure you select nutrition and dietetics. Please don't select human nutrition, foods, and exercise. Yes, we're in that department, but our program is technically nutrition and dietetics. In our application, program specific looks different than the traditional MS PhD program within HNFE. So once you indicate that program of study about halfway through the application, then it'll bring you to the program specific application criteria. Yeah. Okay. Well, oh, these are our lovely students from our first cohort. I knew this picture was coming up somewhere. Just to give you a little bit of information about our program outcomes to date, we've graduated one cohort, so we do have limited outcomes to report at this point in time. But I will tell you all 11 of 11 students in our first cohort graduated on time. We had 6 in our first group and 5 in our second for track 2. I believe 9 of 11 have taken and successfully passed the RDN exam. And then how many of them are employed? I think 9 of 11 are also employed.
Not sure about 1 or 2.
100% of those who have sought employment are currently employed. We're not sure if 1 or 2, I think they were just waiting. So areas of employment of our graduates thus far, Kayla went into clinical research. Avita went into clinical practice. Jenny is now in long-term care. Michaela, I think, was doing transplant nutrition, so clinically focused and some nutrition support. Michaela's awesome because she had no idea what she wanted to do when she came into the program, got into the clinical, and absolutely just fell in love.
No, she thought she was going to do outpatient, like 100%.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then she went into clinical, was like, oh my gosh, I love this.
Yeah. And then she fell in love with like nutrition support, inpatient clinical practice, and that's where she ended up going. We've got from this other group, we've got a few that are in clinical settings, one that's in outpatient eating disorder counseling, and then one that's doing, I'm not sure for specific, but collegiate nutrition. I think she's at Eastern Tennessee State University doing a variety of roles in both the food service management and like student outreach components of practice. So that's a little bit about our first graduating cohort. We have 6 that you saw earlier that are about to graduate here in December. And then we have another 6 that are going to graduate on track to graduate here in the spring. And that's it. Our presentation went a little long today, but I'll open it up for some general questions. And then we have our 4 lovely students who came today to answer your questions from the student perspective. We'll step out for that. But are there any other questions about what we shared during the presentation or anything that we maybe didn't get the chance to address? Yes. Yeah, thank you for asking that. And I think I did do better to spell that out on the webpage. So if you're applying for track 2, you're actually applying for a start term of summer 2023, because that is when you would officially move into graduate student status. Yes.
So you mentioned that research project, like grant proposal that we come up with. Do we have an opportunity
That I believe is strictly a proposal. Yeah, thank you for asking. Nothing in the chat. What other questions do you have? Okay, very cool. Allie, Spencer, Emily, and Natalia, if you don't mind coming on up.